Hello. Cansado. Muy cansado. ¿Qué tal? ¿Vosotros? ¿Bien? Club. Yeah. Okay. I'm gonna ask these guys if they're gonna come or not. ¿Tienes una Pi tú para...? Aquí estaré. How was your weekend? Do something now.
Y el viernes pasado intentamos corregir el problema de los arrobas y no conseguían, empezamos pero no lo conseguimos. Y entonces seguimos con este problema incluso utilizando los tags.
Okay.
Lo que quería hacer, si detectas que en la línea que no es una flecha, acuérdate que no digo ahí.
Tranquilo. Sí. If you can, yeah. At least the Pi. At least the Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. 23, 14, 132, 16.
Pi, ¿no? El usuario.
Sí, Pi.
16.
23, 14. Y es el Raspberry.
Y está... espera. Okay. Okay. So I'm gonna share my screen. So I have some good news and some bad news. Let's start with the good ones. The good ones is that we have other solar panels up there that we can try that are gonna be a little bit more efficient than these ones, and that we can give a try with only one, because it's the ones that we use for Smart Citizen. And I have all of them allocated except 2 or 3, but I don't, I can let's say we can try with one and see if the situation improves with this, the Pi 0.
Sure.
The bad news is that we have this and another session only. As you can imagine, and especially well for both MDev and the academy, the stress is rising because of finals or assignments or final projects, etc. So we always decide to leave things to a voluntary, in a voluntary way. If you want to keep going and you like the project and you are committed to it, I'm more than happy to support. But don't feel stressed if you are overwhelmed. This is more than optional, and this is only to show you things that we don't see in the rest of the academy. It's not about making more work or assignments or anything. It's just to know extra stuff. Okay? And that's the whole point. So far, what we've learned a little bit is how to do scripts in Python using a computer that doesn't have a screen, so that we have to connect remotely. We have to log into the computer. We launch the scripts. We edit them. We check if they work or not. We set it up on an actual hardware setup that works, good or bad, but it does work. We also know how to create services. So we know how to, when that fails, that the script runs on itself and start working again. And the idea for today is that we start making a website and we start serving it. So we're going to leave aside these problems of hardware and everything, because I think it's more important that I give you a little bit more ideas in the classes, and then during the rest of the year or however much time we have, if you want to get involved into it and you want to deploy it or do things, then you can work it. We can keep going, but we only have 2 classes, and I'd rather invest the time in the classes giving you content than debugging, and we can debug on our extra time, especially when we are less stressed. So what we're gonna do today is to make a website already, which was the first purpose of this the class, and start serving it. So to start serving it, I have to give you some concepts, which are what is actually a server, and how does the world is gonna, or how are we gonna visit what is going on inside our Raspberry Pi. So let's imagine, like, from here to the left is the internet. Okay, so this is the world, and we are connected through our internet gateway, which is IAC. IAC's gateway. There's a router in the door that is via our internet service provider, or ISP. ISP, just so it's familiar, can be basically they give you internet access and a piece of hardware, but that piece of hardware you can replace as long as they give you an Ethernet cable that goes out into the world. We will see this week actually with Guillem. I don't know if this Friday or in a week from now, how that connection is done, what happens if we have optic fiber and things like that in networking, which are more complex setups. But the main idea is that we have an area which is like our local network in here, and then the internet on the other side, and we have a gateway. Okay. Now the Raspberry Pi is somewhere in a local network that is connected. All the devices in the local network are all connected in the gateway, and we will access the Raspberry Pi always through the gateway. So imagine that I am somewhere in this local network. I have to first go to the gateway, and then I can go to the Raspberry Pi. We have done already this by connecting to the Raspberry Pi using SSH. Now what we will do is we're gonna, instead of connect to the Raspberry Pi directly, we're just gonna ask for content, and we're gonna recuperate some static content, AKA a website. That website is just a bunch of HTML, CSS files, some JavaScript maybe, etc. that the Raspberry Pi has inside, but that, as you can imagine, is protected somehow. So you cannot access everything on the Raspberry Pi just because you navigate to the IP address. In fact, if I go now to this one, if I go to this IP address, I don't see anything. Unable to connect because there's nothing in there in that IP address. There's a Raspberry Pi, but no one is serving content. No one is giving me the content, and no one is telling me what to do, if I should go to an application, if I should receive an HTML file. There's nothing. For that to happen, what we need is a server, a small server application that is a program that is running in the Raspberry Pi. It's just that this program can be Apache server, can be Ngnx, can be many things. We're going to use one called Ngmx. That its only job is just to connect things that come from the outer world. So what we call HTTP requests. So from another computer, I do an HTTP request, and this responds back with HTTP, which we will see in networking as well, how that is transferred and everything. But basically, we do a request, and this server says, oh, okay, you want a website. And it says, okay, this website is here. I get it back, and I send it to you. Okay. That website can be static, the same, just a bunch of HTML files that don't change, or it could be a web application, the same as the one that you use for controlling the CNC, or Node-RED, or when you go into your Facebook, or when you go into anything that has some processing in this part, application here, that it changes for each petition. So it's not the same that Roger or Adrian or anyone does. So for a static website, all of you will make an HTTP request, and the server will give you to each of you the same. But when you go to a dynamic or a web application, you do the request, and the server gives you, each of you, something different. Okay, the same like your Facebook doesn't. You don't get Adrian's profile, or you don't get Roger's, right? So that's the same. Now, what we're gonna do today is we're gonna set this server. Okay. And we're gonna do a small website that we will start pushing into the repo. And if we have time, we will configure the recurring job so that we download the new website from the repo whenever we can into this into here, so that we don't have to go into here, so that it downloads it. If this has internet, it could periodically, every hour, every day, we will decide, download the new state and put it into the server folder. Okay. Is this more or less clear in terms of concepts? Okay. So yeah.
Just one question for the IP. You will explain us how to get an IP that is accessible outside of YAP?
Yeah, that will be the last session. The idea, and answering to that, here there's a small comment that says with a static IP. So basically here, what does this mean? Any device that is in the local network connected to this gateway, there's something called DNS in the gateway. That is basically domain name server, which, sorry, it's not DNS, it's DHCP, which is basically a protocol that assigns IPs to the devices that are in the local network. So for instance, when we get to IAC and we connect to the Wi-Fi, the gateway will run the DHCP and will basically say, okay, this device has this IP address, this other device has this other IP address, and this other device has this other IP address. It normally tries to keep them, and does that by looking up into the MAC address of each of the devices. Each of these have a Wi-Fi antenna that has a hardware identifier that is different in this one, in this one, in that one, in that one. And the gateway says, okay, this antenna that has connected in the past, if I can, I'm gonna keep the IP address that I gave it 1 day ago. So that is not constantly changing, but it can change. So it's a dynamic IP address. If you want to access a website, normally what you want is that IP doesn't change. So that's when it comes down to a static IP. Static IP means that it's an IP that is always the same and is fixed on this end. It says, I want an IP that is always the same, and it tells the router or the gateway, please assign me the one that I want. And you normally do that knowing that the gateway has a certain amount of IP addresses that are reserved for this type of things. And you say, okay, just assign dynamic IPs from 0 to 250, and from 250 to 255, I'm gonna use it for static ones. And for instance, I tell this one, use this static IP or this other one. Now, in the setup in Ngmx, it's going to be a little bit more complex, but I will get into details into the next session. And actually, we'll try to connect it through the common Raspberry Pi that is by the door. That also gives access to the print FabLab VCN. So you know that have you seen that this print FabLab VCN, this website, right? You know. Print.fablab VCN. So this is an access to all the status of the printers. And right now, I could be lying to you because I am in the local network, but I tell you that this works from outside as well. And how does this work? Each of these printers are connected to a Raspberry Pi, each of them. And then all of them are connected to the local network. And there's a Raspberry Pi that has a public IP address, a static, that from which all of the other Raspberry Pis hang. So there's a Raspberry Pi and then all the ones from the ones in the 3D printing group. And we're talking to the main one right now. Yeah. Now, what we will try to do is put these ones as this one hanging from the main one as well, and call it solarfablabvcn.org. And if it works, it works, and if it doesn't, it doesn't. Okay. But that is the main idea. Now, the other concept that I specified there was DNS. That I made a mistake is DHCP is the one that assigns the IP addresses. DNS is the one that associates the IP address with the domain name. For instance, this IP that is 172.162.3 blah 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 would be solarpi.fablabvcn.org. So when I go here and I put solarpi.fablabvcn.org, then I go to this and I don't have to remember the IP address. And we will try to also do that so that we have a way to access the website without having to remember the IP address. Okay, but for now, we're gonna just serve the content. And to serve the content, I'm just gonna show you the first step. And if you have the Raspberry Pis around you, it would be nice. And I give you this one in a second. The first step is just install Ngnx. And for that, it's as simple as sudo apt get install Ngnx. And Ngnx does two things. The first one is a server that activates, or is a program that activates already, activates some services that basically are running all the time, serving your content. And it also has some configuration files so that you are able to hang different websites or different URLs, let's say, to different things. For instance, imagine that we go to, an example would have been when you were going to CNC by the sea. Now it's not connected, but we had this, and we could also go to photo. And photo was showing only a photo of the camera, and this one was showing the application. And they are two different things. One is just the camera stream, and the other one is the application. And Ngnx takes that URL and says, okay, you want to go to the photo, so I send you to the camera stream. Oh no, you want to go to the application, so I send you to the other thing. And those are two different things running in the same, two different programs. The same way I could be sharing my Firefox with you, or I could be saying my calendar, or I could be saying my Trello or my email. Yeah. So there are different things running in parallel, and Ngnx takes care of serving that content depending on what you ask for. Okay. So now that is installed.
Sorry, can you please install what's sudo what? Sudo...
Here, you have it in the documentation, and it's in the class of today, just here. Okay. Now, I'll give you a couple of details. Now that, let me see, TIFF. A second. So as soon as Ngnx is installed, we'll be able to see a service. Same way as you will remember that when you run your service, you could do a status of the service, and it will tell you it's active, inactive, etc. So already right after installing, we can already see that there's a service running called Ngnx. It's just to run things as a super user. So if you want, you can already do sudo apt-get install Ngnx. Well, actually, better do update and install Ngnx. And then let's see. So it's installing.
Mine said command not found, but I go like apt-get.
But you need to be on a Linux thing. It's all based on this. In Mac, you don't have a predefined package manager, and there are some called Homebrew or others.
Okay.
But apt is only for Linux.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so it's unpacking, creating symlink. You see here, the symlink is the service that we'll see already running. And if you want, you could already navigate to the IP address here, and you would already see a website, a default website. Okay. Once we do that, I'll give it to you, and I'll show you where you have to. Well, actually, you could access if you want.
How can I know the IP address? How do I know the IP address of the site?
If you didn't set the server name, you have to scan it. Adrian has a scanner for that gives you the server names and the IP address.
I know the name. I know already
IP,
the site, but I want to check this default website.
Okay. IP space Other, like address, but without ESS. Okay, so just to show you, system CTL, status, Ngnx, what's that? System CTL. Let's see if this is creating symlink. Ngmx. Ngnx. There we go. Okay, so it's already running the service. We already have a the server running, and if you go to, so sorry, I make it a little bit bigger. Sudo system CTL status Ngnx, and you should already see that is active. Okay, that means that we are serving something. For now, you don't know what we are serving, but I'll show you. Let's just go to the same address that we were going earlier, and let's see what we have in there. Here, now we have a website. Okay, it's nothing. It's just a super simple HTML. But now when we go to here, to the same IP address, we have something. Okay, if you see this page, the server is working fine. And we don't have to do much. We just have to install it, and the server is running. Okay. Yeah.
I'm doing the sudo system CTL. It says it doesn't exist, and I have already installed it.
Ngnx. Are you sure it's no? It says failed to fetch. It does not install. You have to do apt upgrade.
Yeah, I've done.
And then install it again. And then install it again.
And then install again.
Yeah. Okay. So. Yeah. If you want, I can go up. If you want, I can disconnect.
I am sure it's good as a page, but the website, if I type the same ID.
Okay, so have you typed that? Or no, because this is one thing. You have to type it without just the IP address, and I'll tell you why in a second.
First,
just the IP address.
Maybe Firefox adds the
No, because I use Firefox and it doesn't. Okay. So whenever you get to see the website, yeah. Okay. So what's happening here? Now, let's see one detail. What happens if I put HTTP like that? It works, right? If I put HTTP only, HTTP semicolon or colon slash slash. But what happens if I put HTTPS colon slash slash? It doesn't work. Exactly. Why that doesn't work? Because HTTP and HTTPS go through different ports. And HTTP goes, so if we go back to our little image, the server, basically this application has several ports. well, the PI in general, but we're exposing several ports. Okay. For SSH, we have the port 22. And that doesn't go through any server, it just goes because there's a port 22 open and the server just ignores it. Okay, that doesn't care. HTTP goes through port 80. And HTTPS goes through port 443. 443. What does it mean? That when we do a request, we are in our computer here, and we do a request here. If we do HTTP, we're gonna go through this port. If we do SSH, we're gonna go through this port. And if we do HTTPS, we're gonna go through this one. And in here, per default, we're not serving anything yet. We're only opening the port 80. And we'll see that, how to change that in a second. What is the difference between HTTP and HTTPS? The S is security. And basically this connection here, the connection through HTTPS is encrypted. Here, the one in HTTP through the port 80 is not encrypted. That's why it appears this little icon here that says connection not secure. Your connection is not private. Information you submit could be viewed by others like passwords, etc. Anything that you do in a website that you are accessing through HTTP can be sniffed. And we can see all the connections by anyone in the network. So if you go to any place or any website and they ask you for a password and it's HTTP, never, because anyone can see it. Okay. Now, HTTPS does two things: changes the port through 443, and also the whole connection is encrypted with a key. That key is generated on the host. So this guy has a key, and then you do a request, and this tells you the key, and it says, "Oh yeah, I'm gonna serve you the content, and this is my credentials. Let's say this connection is secure, and here it says." And then you go and then your computer goes to Google, to Mozilla, to whomever, and says, "Oh, I received this thing. Is this actually secure?" And they tell you, "Yes, you can trust this certificate." Okay, then I connect. Because especially that happens in Spanish government websites, that you connect to a Spanish government website and they say, "It's secure connection, but the certificates have expired. They are old." What does that mean? That when the Spanish government set them up, at some point they were valid, but they expire in a year or two, because then technology is evolved and people can hack them. So they expire and they have normally 3 months, 1 month, 1 year, etc. And the government doesn't change them. So every time that you connect to a Spanish website, a government, they say connection not secure. Are you sure you want to connect? You want to go? And it's the government. Okay. That the only problem there is that, yes, it's secure, it's encrypted, but the certificate of the government is old. And you can validate it, and they say, okay, it's secure, but it's old. So they should have changed it in already. Yeah, that's more or less the idea. We will set probably today maybe we will also set or try to set encryption. The only problem for encryption is that you need to have a domain already. So you need to have already something that is not an IP address, but is solar.fablabcn.org, for instance. Okay. Now, more things. So what is this website then? This website, so that you check on your Raspberry Pi. Did you all install it? The ones that you have, well, you have this one. Did you install it? Mm-hmm. Okay. The rest, if you want to, I don't know if you want to group or something. How does it work? Like, I need to connect into the IP. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah. How does that work? So you have to do SSH, then the name, the username that you want to connect to, in this case pi. And where is that? Is at the IP address. You can do either the IP address or you can do solar, in this case, the host name, which is solarpi.local. But for this to happen, you have to be able to see from your local network the Raspberry Pi, which means that you have to be in the same local network, which is IAC Wi-Fi. Okay. So I don't know if this, yeah. It will ask for a password, and then you're in. I'm actually into terminals now. Okay. It doesn't matter. So now that we're here, let's see. And with that, you start tweaking the website and everything. Let's see where this website is. So normally, all these things are always in bar 3w HTML. That's a folder that if you open in here, so if you see what's inside, you see an index, Ngnx debian.html. And this is basically the website that we see. You can edit that, and if I actually change here, FabLab, VCN, I close it. Oh. Sorry. You need to open it with permissions, so super user permissions. And one trick, if you forget ever about sudo, if you do sudo exclamation, then it repeats the last command with super user. It's just some tricks. So I go here, FabLab, VCN, I save it, and now when I navigate again, change, boom, super fast. The server already sees that website, and whenever I request it, it gives me the new one. Okay. How do you edit that? You can use Nano, you can use Beam, you can copy the website and then send it over with SCP, like the same way as we did with the Python script, however you want. What I encourage you to do now, if you want, is to modify the website a little bit, just tweak it a little bit, see if that it works. And if you want, make another page with a link. So what I would do is, for instance, make an about page and then link from the index to the about page. Okay? About us. Yeah, like make another file that can be here. Okay, so task is enter into the pi whichever you want. Just this one is Adrian's, so coordinate with him if you want to enter in this one, so that you edit things at the same time or not at the same time. Modify the index, make about page or whatever other page that you want. Make a link between them so that we can see them, and then let's show and tell. Let's give us till 1. Okay, it's an easy task, let's say. And after that, I show you how to configure the other ports and the SSL. Yeah, let's do it.
How do you create a new file?
You just do nano and the name of the file. It will open nano and that. Or if you want, you can do touch and the name of the file, and that just creates it. Yeah.
No.
Y ahora dijiste que escudo, ¿verdad? Ahora depende de lo que quieras hacer. Si quieres ver si Ngmx, por ejemplo, está con él, es Ngmx sudo espacio systemctl system control ctl no C de casa T de Teruel L de espacio status espacio Ngmx al revés, con la I Vale, ahora, ¿dónde está la web? El website está en //HTML. Eso lo sé yo porque ya lo he usado muchas veces, pero el website tienes que ir ahora HTML. Vale, y ahora ls para ver lo que hay. Y ahí está. Ahora ellos creo que están editando uno, entonces coordínate con ellos para ver si
yo hago el
lavado, puedes hacer otra si quieres, puedes poner un, no sé, un repito, me da igual.
Hago una carpeta para poner imágenes.
¿Una qué?
Una carpeta para poner imágenes.
Sí.
Ya hemos modificado, ¿vale? Tenemos la teoría que Clem, we have the theory that Clem is the only person that's going to check this website. So now we can say
You talking to me, Roger?
Ok. ¿En qué estás?
se queda grabado.
Que aquí yo como hago otra página. O sea, do I need to like
It's terrible. You won't find us there.
No, it's too high. So, never mind, you enter and you say first and you type it.
What?
You know why it's well.
how do I like create another, like you're doing the index. How can I do, for example, the about?
No, this is about.
The about is in the index?
Imagine. And now function. No, but this is the title that goes.
Okay, good.
And now we can go back. So En esta carpeta, allá está semilla, está este archivo. And you could actually change the name.
So how do I create another file?
Yes, it's now it's about that. You say nano, the name of the file. No, wait, do sudo nano. And now the name of the file with the extension. I don't know. We have about, let's do another page. Let's say page.
Photos or
Page one.
page one.
Dot HTML. No, without spaces. And now whatever you write.
Okay. All right.
Go back into the,
If I wanted to change the title of the.
Tienes que, you have to write all these things, no? So,
just if you go into the other one, you copy and paste it and put it into that one.
Sí, exacto. O si tienes abierta esta, if you have opened the website in Safari, you can copy from the hello web inspector. Why is it Everyone has more space here. Nice dog fight. No, because this is the index. So you just need to do the permission now.
Instead of about, fun again. Great, you made it.
Ahí no creo que tengas mucho.
And then,
Ostras, esto es como...
sí, todo en uno.
Hello, Clem.
Hey,
How are you?
sorry, I wanted to attend in person, but I'm still in Switzerland today. I'm flying back tonight.
Don't worry. Just checking if you had any questions or anything. I think
Most of it we did last time with Adrian, no?
it is the same same thing that we did with Paco, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yes.
I would,
But the only a lot of the FA Academy, which is Adrian only did, and the rest didn't do it. So
mhm,
in the same session, but adding a couple of things more.
so can
for sure.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. He did this part. Yeah.
But yeah, maybe we can. I can connect with Ines.
If you want, feel free. Yeah. If you want, I'll tell Ines as well when we have when I'm gonna show you something new from and so last time.
But make like another room inside the Zoom. Clem, would you like that? Or is that...
Sure, we can do that, Ines.
I can get
But otherwise, Ines, if you want, like tomorrow or sometime this week, we can also sit down and look at the play together, because it's a bit difficult over to do that remotely.
So you did already the installation of the Ngix and the website.
Yes, we have a currently. If you type the IP address of our Raspberry Pi, there's a static website with an about page on it. And so I'll stop video for bandwidth. Sorry, I have poor Wi-Fi here. And so what you want to do is probably plug in our Pi. You should be able to access the static website that we built. You can also SSH remote into the Pi and edit the about file that we created.
Okay,
Does that make sense?
yes, I already connected. I
Great.
mean, yeah, so I could do things now.
Could you,
I will,
Ines,
yeah,
could
tell
you send me, could you remind me, send me over the chat, what's the IP address of our Raspberry Pi? And I'll try to see if I can connect to our website over here.
Okay, yeah.
Si lo hago otra vez, simplemente está haciendo una ¿sabes cómo gestionar bien la personalidad? Lo único es que me interesa un poco que si lo dice, algo que estabas haciendo. Pero me ha pasado muchas veces con eso, no sé cómo hacerlo de manera limpia. No tampoco sé. A veces porque.
¿Cómo dices que debe escribir en Safari el código?
Sí, algo.
¿Cómo es el código? ¿O era Firefox?
No, no, pero es como activar el sitio para integrados. Así te pondría desaparecer.
No lo sé exactamente, pero tenemos algo como los files. O sea, para no abrirnos todos
Can you hear me?
No sé, no me acuerdo. Busca como nombre del.
Voy a contar ya. Vale. File about
Okay, some show time. Do you have already anything we can see? What is your IP address?
Our IP address. 172, 15, 23, 15.
Okay. Clem, are you watching?
Hello.
They are. We have some friends here.
Hi, friends. Oscar, I feel like maybe since I'm not on the EAC network, I can't just use the local IP address, right, of the Pi. I need to have like first connect to the EAC IP address, and then within that the Pi's IP address.
That wouldn't be feasible. So you would need to connect. So to be able to, so what's happening is that Clem sits outside of the network. So he won't ever be able to access here because this is a local IP address. We will need to have a public IP address that is accessible from the outer world, that in this case we don't have, and that we cannot access to any of the other services that we have around in the house, and from there access to here. That's not possible unless there is a service that has the possibility to access from, that you can access from the outside, and then from that one reach and go into another one. But you're not gonna be able to see this the website right now. In practical terms, it won't happen.
Print.fab, that's a global IP, the public IP address, right?
Yeah,
For
yeah,
HTTP.
exactly. So yeah, and from that one, you only see the server is only giving you the print FabLab VCN, but it's not giving you access to any other of the other computers. So you cannot see this one yet.
I see.
But still, good friends here that to see you. Is and you see, so one thing is from here, as soon as we create this, we already know that this about page is in the IP address about.html, and that the index is in this one or in this one too, right? And this one is equivalent to /index.html. It's exactly the same. But imagine that in the internet, the amount of content that there is, how do you map? How do you know what things are available inside a website? Because I just know that this IP address is that one and that this is the index. But I don't know that there's an about page that goes into that IP address with about.html. I don't know that from before. I need to know, I need to have a link inside that, yeah, so that I am able to jump from page to page. So two things there, just two comments is that first one that you it's with links, and there's also the concept of the sitemap. I don't know if you ever heard of that, but it's the idea. I think this no. So some websites you'll see that somewhere in the bottom it will say sitemap, and then you will see the whole list of links of the whole website. Yeah. Otherwise, there's no way for you to know what content is in the website unless you crawl the website using robots, small, like trying to find each of the link and make a map with a script. That's what a lot of things like Google and these things do. They go to a website, they crawl it, they get robots, like it's called actually robots, that they go and check different links and they say, okay, this is in here, this is in here, and this is in here. You can either give that to Google and you have a file that is called robots.txt, or they do it by just analyzing the website. Yeah. But otherwise, yeah, if there's no link, there's no way to know. And that is when you go into, let's say, the dark side of the unlinked things that is like, it's not exactly that, but it's what is not indexed by search engines, is what we call the dark web, let's say.
Or a village with a filing on your server, and you don't give anyone the link, is it considered a secure way?
I mean, at the end, no, because the thing is that as soon as there's a server running, there's a possibility that someone is going to try to connect to it and is going to crawl the server and see what's open. Either if it's an interesting server because they want to jump in and see, because there's probably, I don't know, content or whatever, they're going to try to hack it. Otherwise, if no one has the link, and in the vast majority of the internet, they're not going to find it. But still, it's not secure. I mean, at some point, in some way, they're going to find, I think. Exactly. Which means that it's not, it's a matter of time instead of a matter of technique. Okay. Any other example? 16? Huh? 14. Oh. 14? Okay. My test. Good. Okay. And then from here, there's no way to go back to the index. So I have to go back. Okay. Good. So, well, now we know that here we have the website. Let's look at where this is configured. How is Ngnx configured to know that this is the web page that we want to deploy, that we only access the port 80, that we want to access only that is the same to do this than to do the index Debian, how is it? Ngnx data. That is exactly the same because we're accessing the same file, and Ngnx, whenever it receives a request from this, is redirecting to the index. It's the same that what happens in yours, like in number 15. If I go here, is that, but if I put index, it's the same, yeah? So where is that all defined? So if you go to cd etc Ngnx, this is the folder for Ngnx, and here you'll see a lot of things, but one of them is called sites available. Very easy to remember. So sites available, and in here you see the default one. This is just a file that if I open it, this is the configuration for Ngnx, and this is where everything happens. You can change it, and you can have a lot of different configurations, etc. But I haven't done anything yet that requires more than one server in the same machine. With one file, you can configure a lot of applications. And here, if you look at it, we already have the default server configuration, but that basically says server, listen on port 80, so HTTP. This is the default server, and where do we find the website? In var 3w HTML. If we wanted to change that somewhere else, we can put it in another folder. It's, I don't know, desktop 3w HTML or desktop website, it doesn't matter, but you have to change it. The only thing is that it says root. So this website has to be seen by user root. So the Pi has several users. One of them is Pi, and the other one is the root user, which is the one that has all permissions. So this folder has to be in the root, or has to be able to be seen by root, because Ngmx is going to be run by root. And in here, something that you already did, but that in principle is not such a good practice, is that you change the name from index and Ngnx debian.html, and that could have stopped working because, and it didn't stop working because of this line. Basically saying all these ones are going to be considered index. And if I change, when you change the name, it doesn't matter because index.html is here. But if you had put main.html, it would have said not found. Okay. Server name. There is no server name. Here is what you give for, imagine that is solar.favacademy.org or whatever. It doesn't mean that it's going to be accepted in general. It's just that it's server level, but it doesn't mean that all the internet is going to know that that works, that you have to buy the domain for that to happen. And then here it says location /.
So if you buy the domain and you put here the domain, it's already started.
Yeah, so when you buy the domain, you associate it with an IP address.
Okay.
And then here you put the domain and it should work. Yeah. Location /. It means that this is the location that is just the default location that doesn't have anything, which is this. Okay, that's where I go. If I wanted to put something else, like, I don't know, photo, that's another location. It's not another website, it's another location. That's something totally different. That could be an application running, that could be another website, could be a sub website, whatever. And that's why when you go and navigate into here, you see web. But if I go here, it redirects me to web. I go to here, and it says another web, another URL, etc., right? So to each of these things, see, it's, I guess is, well, so this in here, I go into the Festa, let's say, to the basket, and it gives me another application that is in this / whatever other thing. And you can customize what is in every location, and then you just make links. So when I click on this image, it redirects to another application. Okay. Now, so this is the location, the normal one. We could put another one that is, I don't know, location, photo, and I don't know, if you want, you can show a dog or something. And in here, you follow this sorry, we have to put where that goes, which would be root, for instance, var 3w HTML photo. And here you say, you normally put this same directive here that is going to try to do it, or otherwise just give you a 404, which means not found, that's nothing in there. The same way that if I go into here and I say photo, 404 not found. Okay, that's the principle. That's what the lines is doing. And in here, you just put a picture that you could download or you can view, and that you put it in here.
We can put a file which is not called index.html in photo.
Yeah.
But you have to write after photo like photo.html, for example.
Yes.
It's like a link.
It's not like a link, you're just gonna redirect to another folder, in this case. In here, you could put, for instance, other things like an application or whatever you want. What I would do in here is to redirect you to Ngmx static files and have a look into the documentation. It's quite a long thing. You see here location images, location, etc. And here, for instance, you have, I don't know.
If you like create a folder just to load images so that your website has images, do you have to specify this new location or it's not necessary?
No. So one thing is that, so for instance, imagine that in your index, you put an image and you say, this is in this link. Exactly. That's no problem. But if you want, when you click on that, or when you see the image, and then if you click on that image or you say view image, it's just gonna give you the same image that you get. But that's not gonna modify the location, which is this here. In this in here, you could put many things, and one of those could be just static content, like it could be images, it could be music, it could be whatever. And that way, so using this, for instance, images, it will go, this is root, or let's actually do this. Images. If I don't do anything, let's just put this one. If I don't do anything as in this one, it will just go to bar HTML, 3W HTML images by default. Or I can re-specify something and go somewhere else. For instance, I don't know, root, I don't know, media 3W or media share, I don't know. And that way you can make a server in which you just share music with your friends. Okay. But in this case, if I made a file, a folder in here that is images, and I put something in there, I just gonna navigate and see that images with this root folder in here. Okay. You can put a password in the Ngnx lab. Yeah. Here, yes, you can put a password in here. You normally don't put the password in the configuration file. You put it on a separate file, and then when you put in the password on the server, then it checks that they match. And normally passwords are saved in the what we call hash, which means it's not the actual password what you save, is a encrypted representation of the password. Let's say that way, if they get the password because they hack the computer or the file, they don't actually, they get the hash and they have to decipher the hash as well. So you can put a password the same way that when you go into print.fablabvcn.org, let's see, print, well, now it's not going to ask probably, but you saw earlier that there was, it's in here, this one. This is on the Ngnx level. So it's on the server level, not on the application level. So when you access a website, you can have the server tell you, no, you are requesting, right before entering the computer, you are requesting something. What is the password? Okay, you go in. And then the application says, what is the password for the application? And there's another layer of security. So in this one, we have both, which are very stupid passwords, but both work. Okay. And you can do that. I don't exactly remember the instructions, but Digital Ocean, Ngnx, HTTP password. DigitalOcean, it's a company that serves content, will have servers and everything, and they give you, they have quite good tutorials. So password authentication with Ngnx, not very difficult. If you want and if you feel like it, you can already give it a try. What I suggest is that you try to serve first, so that you try to modify the default configuration, and that you try to serve some images. And if you want to enable security, go for it.
If you want to run the HTTPS, you have to change the LT by the.
You have to change that by to 443, but you need a certificate for that.
And if you don't have one,
That is not gonna, no one is gonna navigate to your website. The browser is gonna tell you no, forbidden. It's too dangerous. How do you get a certificate? Let's encrypt. So this is an open source initiative that provides TLS, is transport layer security, so 443, that gives certificates for free in a very easy way, and it combines very well with Ngmx. The problem is that you need already a domain. So you cannot request a certificate for an IP address only. You could in the past, but not anymore. Now you need a domain. So we will try to do that when we have a domain for solar.fablabvcn.org. And then I'll show you how to do the description for us. If you want, you can do, if you want to know how to do it. Ngnx, let's encrypt DigitalOcean. And here it talks about this application called CertBot, a robot for certificates. Modifying the configuration, you see that here you already have to put a domain, an actual domain in the server name. And at the very end, you obtain the SSL certificate. TLS, SSL, 443, HTTPS, they all relate the same thing, okay? And this is the instruction. You go through the different steps for CertBot, super intuitive. And you even can set it so that you auto-renews every once in a while, so that the certificate, when it expires, it renews on its own, and you don't have to do it manually. Yep. So have a go into modifying the default configuration, serve some images, and if you want to try putting a password on the website, go for it. And I stop talking.
What's the number of these like how big can the website be?
As big as the space that you have on the SD card.
Okay.
If you want to check free space on the machine, I don't remember the name, the thing, but I'm sure that I think the DU is DU minus SH, something like that. I don't remember the disk usage, but if you have 16 gigabytes or 8 gigabytes, it's constrained to that. Normally it should be a little bit, I mean, especially for this case, the size should be much smaller, because especially every transaction or every connection that you want to do is going to take a toll into the consumption, and that is not good for the server. We'll see it in the last session.
Sure. Quick question.
Yeah. Tell me.
So we're hosting the website on the SD card of the Raspberry Pi, right?
Yeah.
And so trying to understand the domain name, like how we get that and where it fits in the picture. The domain is basically how people access. It's almost like the gateway into our server where we host our website.
No, the domain name is just like the phone book for people to remember and not have to find the IP address. But at the end, the domain name has to be always linked to a number, like a fixed IP address, let's say. The way that the Pi is going to be found from the internet is a different way and needs to be visible online, either through a static public IP address, meaning that is a IP address that doesn't change and that is visible directly into the internet, not in only on a local area network, or that you have a static IP address that is forwarded by the gateway or any other computer into the Pi that has an IP address. So imagine that there's a let's say a bouncer in the gateway that says you are going to this website. Okay, I'll let you go and I redirect you to this Solar that you're asking, because I know that Solar that you're asking is not me, but is another computer that is in my local area network. And at the end of the day, it's the same thing as configuring two servers, one that is the bouncer or the forwarder, and the other one that is the actual one that contains the website. But at least one needs to have a public IP address.
I see. Okay.
And then that public IP address is going to be linked to a domain name or a subdomain in case of FabLab, because we have FabLab BCN, that is the domain name, and then the subdomain will be Solar, which is one computer inside the network in FabLab.
I see. That makes sense. And you're using DigitalOcean to host the FabLab website?
The host of FabLab website, I think, is GitHub Pages. So it's GitHub. And the domain, we have the domain, and GitHub is the one that hosts it.
Okay.
If I want to put a picture folder.
Yeah.
Pero podría estar activo sin acceso al Si quieres hacer un error, puedes hacer sudo Ngmx dash.
Perfecto.
Y aquí lo vamos a poner el video. Porque home no hay que poner el home. Si haces PWD and home, pero por ejemplo, esto no está en la lo que quiero decir es que igual tengo que hacer ahora he puesto un plan completo así que está listo. Pueden intentar buscar varios home pages, etcétera.
Let me check one thing. Ngnx. Static files out where. ¿Cuál era la tuya, Adrián? La 14.
La 14.
Alright, so for example, if I want to like change it to my page, I want to go and here, I'll have to do like go on page 1 and then we'll be able to do it, or because it's a image, you can do it. So, and you can put like user images where you want. It just matters like how you can communicate or how you can reverse them. So they can so you could actually C space so one folder. Okay. So now you can do it's either
Can you make an index in that or put auto index on?
I create.
You have an index there?
No, just
Creo que no. Si lo pruebas en poner en var data, la carpeta. Okay, have you tried to put up an image? Let's see if that's your IP address was the number 15. And was with images? Images will be here. Okay.
Expressing
Okay. Okay. So just want to show you, if you want to do more advanced stuff, this application that you were using some weeks ago in that machine is also done with that idea. Now, let's have a look very quickly at how that's done in a network level, so that next time when we talk, we see how this goes. Okay. So basically, last time this was used. So this is the Fab Lab. This square here, this blue square, and these were the students last year in the lockdown using the machine. Here, there's quite a few complexities that before Clem was asking about, because here each of you or each of the students has a local network, and here in the lab we have our own local network, and we don't have only one, we have several, because we have IAC Wi-Fi, we have IAC Office Wi-Fi, we have the Ethernet local network, and that is already like 3-4 local networks. But at least we have some IP addresses that we use for things like cloud.iac.net and for the IAC website and things like that. So in this case, this guy here is the gateway. So it's the router that has some available slots, let's say, that connects to the internet. And in here, this yellow brick in here is the Raspberry Pi that has the server application running, that you already know that it's the Ngnx. That already has some layer of security before through a password. That is running 3 things inside the Raspberry Pi. One of them is the application, this application here, and 2 camera streams, one for the top camera and one for the side camera that we had last year, all connected to the same. So there are 3 applications running. And this server has, because of that, has 3 locations. Actually, it has 5 because their cameras were 2 cameras, and you could take photos or watch the video. So there are 5 locations, including the application for controlling the machine. The same Raspberry Pi was connected to the USB to the machine, and also through USB to the USB cameras, feeding all that through the server application to the different connections. Okay, so anyone could see either from here, from the local network, or from the outer world, the whole setup. But understand it as a series of layers of abstraction that has the first thing is the Raspberry Pi running something, or hosting, or having the content already created. Then the server making that available. Then the IAC Wi-Fi giving access through a public IP address to the Raspberry Pi, and then the people connecting to that public IP address, and then redirecting from the gateway to the server, and then to the application. So it's like 3 steps to get to anything. And that is how the internet is built, basically. So all the things are, at the end of the day, are computers somewhere, either Google or Amazon or whatever, are computers much bigger than these ones, but that at the end host things. Right? Let's look very quickly at the application. So, sorry, at the configuration of the Ngnx. So here, this sounds already familiar, the server, listen 443, which is the HTTPS. This is where the certificates are. Last year, well, it was called the CNC by the C.hop2.org. Now it's called CNC. So this, at the end of the day, doesn't matter. This is where the certificates should live. And if you use certbot, it will be auto-generated. So certbot will modify the Nginx server configuration for you, and it will put it there. This is by default. Actually, was not necessary, but it's there for just actually, if you could have navigated, and if there was an index in there, it could have been overwritten, or we could have accessed it. But we're overwriting it with this location, and we will see how. Server name, the server, that is the CNC by the C.hop2.org. And then the different locations. So location, the main one, and we'll see what all this means for now. The second location, the stream in the top, capture on the top. So take a picture from the top, and a stream side. There was no picture on the sides, but it was four locations, okay? Each of them ran a different thing. In this case, it was not a website. It was an application that was running in the local host, in this case in port 8000. So we had the application running, and we were forwarding the connection from the 443 to the internal 8000. This is the same port that you see when you do mkdocs run. If you use mkdocs, you run it, and you'll see something that you can only see on your machine because it's in the local host. And then some extra things that are meant for security and proxies and things like this. This configuration, just so that you know it, is called reverse proxy. So you can serve static content as what we were doing, or you could do something that is called reverse proxy configuration, which is basically I have a connection coming in the 443 and I have an application running in the 8000 and I connect them with a proxy. But I am serving the application in reverse. So I'm watching it from the outside, not from the inside. That's why it's called reverse proxy. Then stream top, capture, stream side, they are all the same, but different configurations. In this case, we had another port, in this case, the 8080, and there was an action, something that we're passing through the URL called stream. This was an application running that was taking the camera feed and put it into this local host. The same for the snapshots. Instead of action stream is action snapshot, the rest is the same. And you see 8081 for the stream of the other camera. And you see that here we define where we go in this case. In this case, we go to the application, which is where you want to go. But in case that you want to see the stream in big screen, you can just go there. And basically, that's more or less how all the servers are running. I mean, there's a lot of different types of servers. The two most common ones are Apache or Ngnx. Apache is a little bit more complicated to set up, and it's heavyweight, let's say, so does a lot of things. Ngnx, it also does a lot of things, but it's much lighter. And you have seen how easy it is to configure and to run. Plus, it's, if I'm not wrong, it's an open source server as well. And this is, so I want you to, well, if you want, and if you have time, of course, I encourage you to go to the resurrected web. Not here, but in here to the repo that you already know. And in here, inside, that we can start working. You see Clement already, like some weeks ago, already started because we did this class when you were on the machines, a little version, let's say. Already put some information, some index, some about. So I encourage you, if you want, to put some more stuff in here and build something like whatever you want. You can put your names, you can put this is a project that we did in the code club, whatever, I don't care, but that there's something that you collaborate on it. And if you want to do it or not, it doesn't matter. It's optional. And that if you want to try and modify the server configuration, you can put it in here, in the server folder. Okay, so this file, no, sorry. The file that goes with all the information. So this one, this file that you, once you have something working, if you want, you can put it in here and put a README so that we know what it is. Yeah. In the next session, what we'll try to do is just have one. So if you want, and if you have time, is to have one website and one server configuration with one Raspberry Pi that we will set up with a public IP address, and that we'll try to put it upstairs with the new solar panels that we have. And then we'll see how long it lasts. And that will be the last session. So make use of it if you want. And if you can have something for the site and the server with my support if you need, but you also can make issues, collaborate, etc. in the repo. This is ours, not mine. It's of all of us. So go for it. And then in the last session, we try to configure it with the main Raspberry Pi over there and explain how it works. And we try to find to set it all up in the last thing. Yeah.
Also, the server will import regularly just in case we make a modification or.
Sorry.
You set it to the config file of the server.
Yeah.
On GitLab. Means this file also we will renew it.
Yeah, you can renew it. Although that is probably not the best workflow because you would have to stop the server and load it.
So that's why we or just
for yes, for others to see, let's say for documentation. Yeah. What we'll do also next time, and we'll start with that. If you have already sites in here, something it can be super minimal. Actually, it should be very minimal because this is going to be running on the solar panel, and we don't want to send a lot of pictures and a lot of videos. Something super light. The more HTML and CSS that we can, the better. That what we're going to do is try to make this to get the website periodically. And that we will do with something called Cronta, which is it's called Daemon, which is an application that runs periodically. And that, for instance, it runs every day at midnight. And every midnight, we check if there's a change, we pull it, and we copy it to the site. And that's it automatically. This is a Linux, well, Unix POSIX command that basically is a time-based job scheduler. Super powerful that I recommend if you are running applications or things like this to, let's say, automatize tasks. I do that for, just so that you see, this, it's a list of jobs that we have in Smart Citizen. This is a web application running on the server. And this is the post-processing of some of the Smart Citizen kits that need extra stuff, like to calculate metrics and things like that. And it's done in Chrome. So with this thing, you can run tasks periodically. And those tasks can be anything, pull and copy, or run Python scripts every hour, every day, etc., and even have a log. So you could have like how it went, if everything is fine, if the thing is running or not, etc., etc., etc. Okay.
You have two servers in only one file.
Yeah, you can have as many as you want.
Using the location.
No, using different sites. So you see here that Ngnx sites. Here, we only have one, which is the default, but you could create as many as you want, as long as you have enough bandwidth. So the same computer, just think of it as the same computer could host 10 million websites if it can support the amount of connections.
And then inside the if I create like another one, like server 2, and inside that file, I would specify another root.
Another server, and another root, and another whole configuration, another domain, etc. So you could have.
In terms of the power consumption per solver, that's more based on the size of the website, not how many people access it.
It is both. At the end, think of that, and nothing is free. So information has to travel, and so that it travels, in this case, there has to be a Wi-Fi antenna. And on Thursday, actually on Wednesday, we'll see a little bit of Wi-Fi, how Wi-Fi communication is done. And basically, an antenna is just a small wire that you excite super fast. You put zeros or ones at 2.5 or 2.4 gigahertz, which is 2.4 times per second, million times per second. And that you have to put a lot of energy into it. So the more information you want to transfer, the more you have to size the antenna, the more consumption there's going to be. That's for nothing is free in this world, sadly. Yes, que sí. Yeah. But basically, at the end, limitations for this with something so small, you find two, now three, which is the bandwidth of the antenna, how much information is able to transfer, how much information or how much workload the CPU can handle, because at the end it has to calculate things and send them and whatever. So that is going to be limited by the power of the CPU. So we have the antenna, the CPU, and we also have energy. So we have triple limitation. So we don't want a very big website that a lot of people visit, because we run out of energy, we run out of memory, and we will run out of bandwidth. And at the end of the day, that's the whole thing. Like, that's why we are going to see all these three things. Yeah.
Oscar,
Yeah.
last week, you discussed the piece of software that you wrote to log and measure how we're doing in terms of starting out the back. Could we?
Sorry, I'm missing.
Oh,
I'm
sorry.
losing you. Yeah, go. Let me see if I have stop video. Okay, go.
Yeah, sorry for my internet over here. I was just saying with Adrien, we met up last week to discuss the hardware and the log that he wrote, and then we were wondering maybe could we meet up sometime this week or next to iron out all the hardware so that by the next session we can just focus on the software.
Yeah, for sure. Whenever you, well, let's find a, if I understand well, is that you want to meet? Yeah?
Maybe, yeah, we should coordinate.
Yeah, sorry, is that it's cutting off the audio. But if there's no problem, we can meet. Let's just find a time slot. And if you want to put an email with some other people interested, we just find a time and we sit down and make it.
Perfect.
Yeah. One little extra thing, because I just remembered and I have it open in here, is as you can imagine, there's a log. And the logs for everything in Linux, at least, or normally are in var log. And if you go to var log Ngnx, you see there are two things, error and access. And the access one is quite interesting because it tells you who has been accessing and what. And finally, I can see who has been accessing to the Pi and what has tried to see and what happened, and even the browser type and the platform. Because the IP address, so the request comes from somewhere. So this was probably you, because you were using Mozilla in a Windows machine, Windows 64, with Firefox 78. And this down here was probably me, this guy here, which was using, trying to go to pictures using Intel Mac OS 1015. It even knows my Mac OS that I have, and the Firefox version. This is important for two reasons: for debugging and purposes, because it's interesting if the website fails, that you know already, oh, this was in Windows, oh, this was in Firefox. Okay, good, for development reasons. But the other thing is that I could start taking these lines and say, oh, this IP address is visiting a lot. And they're using a Mac. And they use the 1015. And they use Firefox 88. And I could make a profile of that person, saying, oh, the person, this guy, I'm going to call it guy number 3. And guy number 3, the next time he visits, I'm gonna offer something else because I know who it is, and I'm gonna offer them, I don't know. They are very thirsty, so I'm gonna offer water. I don't know. Next time I come back, there's an ad for water. That is called device fingerprinting, which is a technique that basically tries to collect information on a server side, let's say, of the machines that are visiting it by trying to create unique addresses or unique IDs for the people that visit the website and make profit out of that. Of course, in the I want to make money mindset, if you have that information and you can cross-correlate that information with other sources, for instance, that person also likes to go to Amazon, and Amazon tells you, no, this one visits a lot of electronics stuff. Maybe you should show him some electronics things from my website. And then there's some interchange in there, right? This in here is quite an interesting topic. And we will do probably some conversation about it in the networking week, especially when we talk about the internet in general, and why this is important also for privacy on the network. Because as you can see, right now I can know that this one was me and that this one was Adriano. And if we do this in the Fab Lab, I probably could end up knowing who, because just of the different machines and the different browsers that they use and the times of the day and things like this. Yeah, so and this is just the access law. Okay. And
can we use active website, not static website using Ngmx?
Yeah. Yeah, like the CNC that I saw.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly the same.
So we could use that and
yeah, that's what Google does, or what, yeah, that's exactly that. Yeah. And with that, I suggest that we go have lunch and that we see you in a couple of weeks. Yeah. Thank you, guys. Ciao.